Pardon the masculinity. What up, YouTube? I am your host, Mediocre Tutorials and Reviews. Back in here with yet one more video, joined today by a very special guest, China.
What's up?
How are you? Get in the camera, girl. Why you over there in the corner?
Well.
All right, listen. We just ended the video. I don't know what order I'm gonna post the videos in, but we were ending off the last video talking about the benefits of marriage. And I've had other guests come up here and give their benefits of marriage. And often, what is given is usually not enough information for men to be able to understand the decision and make that decision with confidence. So we began to have a conversation in our last video about the benefits of marriage. Now, one thing to caveat, if they have not seen the previous video, if you can describe your orientation real quick.
I am a lesbian.
100%.
100%.
She don't want men anywhere near her.
Don't DM me. No, thank you.
You don't like it at all.
No thanks.
It's okay. We share something in common.
It's a beautiful world.
Anyway, so benefits of marriage. I want to hear your perspective because I want to understand how I can move forward with the value when knowing what the risks are, right? And knowing the freedoms that are taken away, right? And knowing all of these things. I just want to hear like some of the value from your perspective.
So, marriage is difficult because it's a contract. You're getting into a contract with someone. But I think when you talk about contracts, you also have to talk about what's in that line, like what's in the fine print, right? And to some people, you got to talk the language to people about marriage that they speak. And so, to me, you have to think more than love. You have to think finances. You learn a person's credit, you learn a person, the ability to, if you want to have assets, if you want to have stuff like that, it's a lot easier to do those things with two incomes. To own things with two incomes, to raise children with two perspectives, two families. On top of that, you have their generation, their wisdom from the generation previous to them that can come into this marriage. It's a lot of benefits to marriage. In my opinion, I'm going to be married.
So the benefits you think are strictly financial? I
think there's financial. I think there's emotional, sexual benefits to being married.
Wait, hold on. So let's just stay at financial real quick and then let's go on to some other additional benefits. So should I not consider a woman who doesn't work?
I think it depends on the type of man you are. If you're the type of man that feel like I don't mind dealing with a woman who doesn't work, who's going to be at home caring for the kids, because technically that's working. But if you want to deal with that type of person, then that's cool. But if you're a man that's like we both have to bring income in, then you have to find a woman who's cool with that. Technically,
yeah, you're right. It is working, but it's more like on the scale of, in my opinion, like McDonald's worker, right? Like it's
that is so disrespectful.
Is it though? Because I feel like it's not like difficult.
You don't think it's difficult raising children?
No. I think it's difficult unless you have your entire day to do it. Like I don't feel like it's so like single mothers. To be a single mother and working, that's got to be one of the hardest jobs combined together. Like that's incredibly hard, and I salute single mothers that have to do it because they have no other options, right? Irrespective of how the situation occurred, right? But for stay-at-home mothers, that like your job is just to stay at home and to raise the children, right? Like I don't think any job, shout out to Bill Burr, is difficult that's performed in pajamas.
So how would you feel, honestly, if you were confined to this house for hours at a time a day? You could not go outside and you had to care for a kid.
No, I agree. That's actually the hardest part. The hardest part is the discipline. That's the hardest part, is just sitting there and not being active. Now, the beautiful thing about being that job today is the internet, because you can still do it and then have a business right out of your house. right? Like I record YouTube videos and I have a full-time active leave the house type of job, right? Like, but you can do that at home if you're that ambitious, if you're a stay-at-home mother. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the job of just raising children, if you have one or two, like it's not, to me, it's not.
But do you have younger siblings that you have to care for?
No,
So,
I was an only child.
Oh, okay. So what you have to understand is it's a lot that comes with raising. They don't just go to sleep when you want them to go to sleep.
Yeah.
They don't cook for themselves. They don't clean for themselves. And then just think if you're dealing with postpartum. Just think if you're dealing with at home, like you don't like confined spaces. You're the type that like to be outdoors. What if you did have a job before? Now you're dealing with the fact that you can't be employed right now because you have to take care of a kid. Like it's a lot that comes with being a stay-at-home mother. It's more than just, well, you're in your pajamas. You're in your pajamas because you didn't have time to change because you have to supervise a kid.
No, I get it, but
breastfeed in between times because you deal with pains that, you know what I'm saying?
Pains.
Yeah.
So it is also a very part-time job. I mean, to what age does first grade start or kindergarten start? It's like 3 years, 4 years old?
You go to preschool at about 4.
Okay, so it's a 4-year job. So it's a super part-time job, right? Like, and then the kid is in school for a large amount of hours per day.
And at that time, most moms go back to work. But when children are not old enough to go, and then you have to think about, do you want to send your kids to preschool at this day and age when you hear about daycares that are abusing kids and sexual assault that's going on inside of daycares?
Right, but you already conceded a bit ago that one of the most difficult components is actually doing it, right? Like it's not the difficulty of raising, right? Like the activities that you do while you're home. It's actually the difficulty of your mind being numb. That's the difficulty. So when I said before, my original statement was it's not hard. I think that it's not hard still because it's not like something that is genuinely, like hard to me is running a marathon. Like hard to me is getting into a job first day and you have to give a presentation the next day, and like all the things that you have to do in order to do that extremely well is difficult, right? Like what's not hard to me is a job that is just, as long as you're awake and you're doing like basic things, like everything will be okay. As long as you don't allow your child to not be hungry and die, you're doing a pretty good job.
I think that you're minimizing a lot of what mothers do.
No.
Because this is, well, not what mothers do, but stay-at-home moms, it's not a just stay woke situation. If you've had a toddler...
You know how I know it's not that difficult? Is because how many kids are in a daycare?
Well, if it's a good daycare, it's supposed to be, 12 kids per adult?
That's how I know it's...
Depending on the age?
Right. So 12 kids, 13, 14, 15, I've heard of, right? Like, that's how I know it's not that incredibly... So, like, if you could do 15, 16, 17 kids at a time...
You're talking about trained people that have them on a specific schedule, that have assistants that come in the room, that have breaks. You're talking about a person who doesn't get a break, who doesn't have an assistant, and who's doing this all day. Like they may not even, if this is your first kid, you don't know all the time that kids should have a schedule for them to be able to do things and you be able to live a life while you're doing those things.
Google it.
Everybody is not Google savvy. Do you know how many adults don't know how to use their smartphones?
I have nothing for you then. You know what I mean? Like if you don't know how to do like what's basic within today, like, you know, there's classes that you can take. This, like you should be able to, like, so here, listen. I understand what you're saying, and I'm being facetious to a point. And it's just to offer a counterpoint. And I say that because everyone starts at a different level of difficulty. Right? Like I cannot expect, and like we have this discussion, this will be a different video. Like we've had a discussion on privilege before. And I feel like we got to highlight this in another discussion. I cannot expect that the things that I've learned in my life should be put upon the next person. Right? I cannot expect that because the way that I was raised, I am now advantaged because I had a dope man raising me. And he taught me things around like discipline, like sticking with something even when you don't want to do that, right? Like I did martial arts as a kid, and the school that I went to pain was every day. And fighting through pain was every day. So I have a concept in my mind of how far that I can reach before I can't anymore. And even when that feeling comes, I go beyond that feeling, right? So I understand these basic tenets and da-da-da-da-da. So like a young woman who hasn't experienced, or a young man that hasn't experienced these things, and then they come up to a hardship in life, they may have a completely different reaction because of how they, were kind of nurtured through separate situations in their past. So I understand that. I completely get it. I'm a person that if I don't understand something, I'm gonna do everything in my power to understand it. And I'm gonna be damn near an expert at it by the time that I'm done. And I have the resources to be able to do that, but not everyone has the resources. So I see what you're saying, and I'm just being facetious.
That in regard? Okay, all right.
But I'm being facetious, but I'm challenging it because I will still challenge that a man that's working 50, 60, 70 hours per week, and a woman who is at home tending to 1 or 2 babies, like that level of difficulty is at a different layer. Just like the level of difficulty of a cashier at a fast food restaurant is different than the level of difficulty at a Fortune whatever company, or the level of difficulty of a business owner. But like they're different levels, and it's okay.
I think that's an opinionated thing because you don't know the same way you feel like I have this amount of level that I can reach. You don't know other people's levels. Mm-hmm. So a mom can feel like this is my level, and how do you know? Like you said, you had a dope dad that raised you.
Yes.
So was he a single parent?
Yes.
How do you think he felt about raising you by himself? Do you think that was an easy task?
No, I don't think it was easy, but I think he did the best that he could, and he never gave the fuck up. And there's too many people that look like us that are black men that give up.
I agree with that, but I also feel like he is one of those people that was a single parent who came home, who took care of you. Mm-hmm. So you can't be like, oh well, that job isn't that tough, because you came out pretty well. So for you to come out pretty well, he had to work pretty darn hard.
I don't disagree with you at all. But I do think I never said anything about single parents. I didn't say anything about single parents.
You're saying about stay at home.
Stay at home. That's completely, my dad was not a stay at home. You know what I'm saying? So like, I agree. Being a parent and working full time, that motherfucker right there, that is, your days are shot because of the amount of tutelage, right? The amount of things that you have to instill in that young person, right? Like that's immense. But if that's your entire job and you have 1 or 2, I don't believe the hype, because media tells us that is extremely difficult. But if you have nothing else to do but to do that for 3 to 4 years, and then they go to daycare, and then they're there for 8-9 hours a day, and then they come home. Like I just don't, or kindergarten, what have you. I'm not sold on that, and I'm trying to be as understanding as what I possibly can. I'm trying to be an understander. I'm trying to. I promise you. I just don't believe it's as hard as what people purport it is, and I would argue for the ones that purport it is so immensely hard. Either A, their child is disadvantaged, right? Like maybe has a learning disability, or something like that. But if it's not a disadvantage, if they have all the time in the day, like, and they have time to dedicate on that, like, so here's what it is. The ones that don't know how to do it, right, well, and they have the resources to be able to do it, and I think that's another thing, like, we have to come to common agreements. If they have the resources to be able to do it, they have the resources, then my thing is that they're not dedicating themselves enough to learning how to do it. And instead, they're opting for the soap operas. And instead, they're opting for the Steve Wilkos show, right?
I think that is such, like, that's not cool.
Talk to me.
I feel like the opinion that you feel, like if you're opting for the Steve Wilkos show, like, no, like, I feel like what you believe or what you think is that you're basically saying, like, if you're a stay-at-home mom, you're watching TV, like, it's not hard. Your kid is chilling and you watching TV. But you have kids that are very energetic and they're getting into things. And you have to cook and you have to clean. And you're doing this all day. And then if you do have a partner that come home from work, they're tired. So your job doesn't stop at 5 o'clock. your job continues. If you have an infant, that child probably stays up all night. Like, it's really not a black and white.
So let me ask you a very quantitative and I hear you, and I'm not gonna disagree with you. I'm always gonna offer a counterpoint as long as this conversation goes off, because I want to challenge you. Obviously. If you were to put a dollar amount on a young, right, like a stay-at-home mother,
okay,
how much money should they make a year if that was a job? No, for real.
How much I would say that person should make? That's a hard question. I guess it depends on how many kids they have.
Well, listen, let me give you a basis. The minimum wage right now, is it $15 an hour? Is it $15 an hour?
I think it depends on where you are. I think it's more like 8.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is it 8?
It's
okay,
like
I thought it was more than that. I thought it was like 15.
They're trying to
in
get
a lot of
15.
places.
I don't think they made it official yet.
Okay. So, $8 an hour, that's poverty, right? That's that's less than $20,000 a year at a 40-hour 40-hour a week work week. $10 an hour, that's about $20,000 a year. $15 an hour, that's about $30-something a year. Is it a $30-something thousand an hour job, or do you think it's more than that per year? $15 an hour.
I think that's very hard to say.
It's hard to say because now we're
Mm-hmm.
actually taking the value of what it is and we're turning into numbers. And that's the thing is like we can talk about it all day, but until we start comparing the numbers, like looking at more of a quantitative, like how much do you think the value of that is? And the answer really. So go ahead, and I'm gonna answer it for you.
I was gonna say that it's difficult because you have women who have more than one baby at one time. You get what I'm saying? So it's hard to be like, you get $30,000, you get $12,000. Like, no, because you don't know their situation. You might have a baby, like, you know, babies have appointments every week until they hit a certain month. Like, that's hard to say.
I was gonna say, so I asked the question and I'm gonna answer it. I think it's based off the quality of care, right? Like, and this is like, you know, you have some schools, like private schools that are like $5,000 a year. Then you got something that's like $30,000 a year right here in the town that we live in. You know what I'm saying? So but the ones that are $30,000 a year, like they have claims to fame, right? Like they push through young men or young women that have gone on to prestigious schools or had prestigious positions or businesses that they've developed right after school, right? Like, but it's way more difficult to put a dollar amount, I guess, on a non-certified person. So if the dollar amount is $40,000, let's just say $40,000. Let's say college tuition. Let's say $40,000 a year for a young person to raise a child. Do you think that that's enough?
I think that's hard to say.
First of all,
you want to come in here? Wait, come in.
First of all, I feel like
You gotta come down in here.
From birth to age 7, that's the prime years of who a person will be.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I know that I wouldn't be who I am today if my mom wasn't able to stay home the way she could. So if you put a dollar amount on who I am today, millions. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would have never been able to be who I am if I didn't have a mother that could be home with me to do certain things. When you have a mother that's working, she can't put in the time that she could.
And my mom worked 2 jobs.
Exactly. Like, I learned so much with her being home. So if I was a man and I had a woman, then I feel like I want the best for my child. And if I know what type of woman I'm dating, then I know that I want my child to be similar to the woman I'm dating. So I want my woman to instill as much as she can into that child so she can be who she is in the future. Like, I just feel like...
So you think it's priceless?
Yeah, I think it's priceless. And I think that men do not birth children. They do not know what it takes to birth a child, to change your body, to go through the... Like, that is something that's imaginable. Like, I just don't think that men could ever relate to that. They don't go through the pain that we go through. So on top of the pain, then we got to watch an infant. And we have to train them. And it's like being a teacher and a cook and like, you know what I'm saying, and a maid,
janitor,
you know what I'm saying, and then when a man come home from work, we gotta fuck you. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I gotta be on cloud 9, like all my life, 24/7.
It's gotta be ready.
And I feel like
and doggy ready.
Men do not understand that. There's a lot that we go through. We go through periods. We go through emotional. Like, you know what I mean? We're nurturers, so we pay more attention to things. Y'all are going to work. That's what y'all are comfortable with. You get what I'm saying? Like, y'all may not be able to stay home all day with the child. Y'all may blow y'all minds out, but y'all can go to work and work all day and come back energized. Like, yeah, I went to work. I was productive. I did this. I contributed to my team at my job. And still feel energy.
And
it's
that's your
draining.
break. That's your break.
It's draining.
Here's
That's
my bad. I was making sure we're still recording. Mo, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm
out.
Wait, hold up. I'm about to pull up a goddamn chair for you. For your ass.
That's a good idea.
Just-
Because
I'm
she
sorry to
on
be all in
it.
your faces.
She on it.
Listen. I don't even remember anything that you just said, except for
She was passionate.
No, because I feel like we don't get enough credit.
This dog is licking
We
me.
don't. I'm sorry. We don't get enough credit. You
Come
know what I'm
down in
saying?
here. They can't
And
see
that
you.
is a conversation. Men
We-
cannot
Women don't get enough credit for what?
We don't give enough. Well, I
Like,
don't
give me
wanna
one
say-
point and then let me talk about it. Like, we don't get enough credit for what?
for giving birth.
for giving birth and like
Going back
taking
home.
care of the
Okay.
child. You know what I'm saying? Because you
So,
know there
are you
women,
saying being a stay-at-home mother? So
Yeah, I would say that you don't get enough
no,
credit for being a
but
stay-at-home.
again, like I'm trying to bring this to more quantitative, like.
Oh.
So, and the reason why you have to do that is because like there's actually a big decision that I would say would have to be made at some point in a relationship is to say, you know, what are our career goals, and do you feel like staying at home would make sense for you? Because the cost of daycare is stupid.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
So-
That's a benefit. For me to stay home is a benefit financially for a man. Period. I mean, I know I could
Not
be working.
period. Because
no,
because you could be making $150 a year.
I get-
could be making $200 a year.
I get that, but you have to realize what you want for your child emotionally, and like I could put a child in
Yeah.
daycare. I could put a child in daycare, and I could be making buku money, but that means that somebody else is going to raise my child majority of the time. So if you want a specific kid, or you want your child to turn out a specific way, then I would think that you would want certain people to raise your child during the prime years, which is birth to 7 years old. So I feel like, who better to do that than your family? You know what I mean? Than someone that you've married or you're with.
I'm not arguing.
That's better than money.
I'm not arguing that the best person to raise a child would be the mother.
Okay, then that's it.
I'm not saying that. China already said.
saying that-
China already said it is very hard though.
It is hard.
So we're talking about difficulty. Talking about difficulty.
Okay, so
Comparing the difficulty of a job that's done in pajamas versus not
So
done in
you're
pajamas.
saying a job is not hard if you don't wear pajamas?
I don't think it's as hard.
okay, let's scratch the pajamas. We're talking about constant. Like, I have a dog, for instance. That means that I care about the dog's safety. It's like you continuously on go. Like you can't even relax. I might be in pajamas, but mentally I cannot relax because I have to care about if he's eating shit off the phone, off the floor, if he gotta go to, you know what I mean?
he's trying to kill
if
himself.
he's trying to kill himself. You know what I'm saying? And constantly, I am not as relaxed. You know what I'm saying? It's like being single and being in a relationship, or being, without kids and then having kids. Like, you have to constantly be in a role. Like, so I have to constantly be parent, and then I have to transition into wife constantly. Like, at what time do I have time for me? So I might be in pajamas, but I actually have something to tend to, like that person. And then when you have children, if you are a good parent, then you love your children to death. You know what I'm saying? Like, you love your children to death. So at that point, you come second. So once you have children, you come second. So then it's like everything they do, you on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're constantly on like protection mode. Like, you know what I mean? And at that point, that's not a relaxed state. That's not a relaxed state, because you may be worried to a certain extent. Like, that is that comes with a lot of pressure.
Right.
That comes with a lot of stress.
Right.
You know, and then it's like, you know, as a man, you go to work, but you had time to be by yourself. You had a lunch break. You probably meditated. What do I, as a mother with an infant?
You watching Jerry Springer all day.
Oh my God.
And then you're basically working all day.
Yeah.
Because you're working as a mother all day, and then you're working as a wife and a mother when your husband gets home or your wife gets home.
Yeah, and
Time to switch. Time to switch.
We stopped talking about marriage.
You've been a mother all day. Now I'm home.
Oh,
You've been chilling all day.
You say that because you ain't experienced that.
Get in
but
the
that's
kitchen.
the whole. Wait, what? So you want her to get in the kitchen while you be a dad after you get off of work?
Wait, there go
No.
those gender roles.
Before I get home.
There go those gender roles.
No, if she's a stay-at-home mother, she's got a goddamn job.
Now,
She got motor graphs when I'm at work too.
Now, question. You
tried it.
You
'Cause ain't no
mentioned-
What you mean? What you doing at home all day if you got?
I got a question.
Ain't nobody cutting no grass.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you were raised by a single father, right?
Yes.
Did he raise you in infant years
Yes.
by himself?
Not by himself. My
Okay,
parents
so-
got divorced. I was like 7.
Okay, so he had birth to 7. Remember, guys. So he didn't have to raise you as a single parent until 7 years old.
He did not have to. No.
So you had already had the certain level of skills that he didn't have to teach by himself
No.
by the time you were 7.
As a young man, I felt like I was taught things that I should not have been taught because a woman was there, putting certain things in me that were not advantageous.
Do you feel like that the reason why you are thinking the way that you're thinking is biased to that situation? So you feel women basically are this thing about women and raising kids is basically based off of that?
I'm talking specific to men. I'm talking specific to men, and a lot of it is black men. I think that we are over-mothered and under-fathered. Again, I think we were over-mothered and under-fathered. And I think my specific situation is unique that at the divorce, I went with my pops.
Which is true. That is unique.
Which is unique. Which is very unique. And so me answering this question, I don't think really paints a picture on what's actually happening. But I would argue that that was probably one of the best things that could have happened to me as I was growing up.
But I think that may be based off of the mother that you may have had. Like everybody Lord. Every woman may have issues with being a mother. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it could be based off of the mother that you have had. Like I don't believe that every
Do you feel like a woman is ever in a position to raise a young man?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I believe that women can raise good men.
Definitely.
No, I think that they can ultimately raise good men, but I think part of the problem is that there's things that are taught to the young men which is not realistic, and it's through the ideas of the woman, how to treat women, how to get respect from women, how to this, how to that. So as a young man, you're not taught very basic tenets that allows that man to mature into a man that is respected, that has integrity, that doesn't do that drama bullshit that we talked about earlier.
So do you feel a man has to teach that?
I feel like it comes more natural for a man to teach a young boy the key tenets of being a strong man.
But does that man have to be a father though? You gonna
No.
like a
No, it could be
knowledgeable woman. No, like
it doesn't have to be the blood father.
If
No.
I don't know the future. So if I have to have a kid and something happens to the father of my child or whatever the case may be, I know that I have to give him somewhat of an example. But my thing is, it depends on the goal. So if my child wants to be a husband or my child wants a certain type of woman, then yeah, I may instill in him what women want because I'm a woman. So I can educate him on what women want because I am a woman.
But here's the problem.
But that is also saying that a child needs a male figure to be that. Why?
Because a child may not need. I think it's important for a child to have a male figure, but he may not need a male figure as long as I have the components. So if there's like a component of like, oh, you should go by this, then I can instill that in him. Like I can educate him on that, and he can go by it, whether he's seen a male or not.
No, like I think you guys have it really wrong. I think you guys have it really wrong. But when we think about like women raising men, and I still feel as though there's certain components of things that you cannot really ultimately teach, because what you think is something like information that you give to a young man and how to be a man, it makes sense like at an unrealistic level, right? So often what we see is that there's young men that are taught things like, oh, put her on a pedestal, treat her like gold, like treat her like diamonds, and all of these like really, and then you get examples of men who like drama, right? Like, so like the definition of what a man is really gets skewed from its traditional sense, which is someone who's about his purpose, that focuses on building up his kingdom, that has discipline, integrity, right? Like all of these things, and a lot of it, like especially like, and I hate to say it, like, being a single mother is a very hard job, but it's often the single mothers that do the most harm to young men in raising them.
Is that statistic?
That's
or personal?
That is
real personal.
Well, it wasn't a single woman that raised me.
No, I'm saying like that sounds like a personal opinion and not an actual, because
like saying that if a single woman did raise you, you may have not been.
Because what I do know as a statistic is that young men or women that are raised in a single parent household, and it's mostly young men, have a significantly higher chance of falling victim to the penitentiary. I do know that, and we all know that. We all know that, right? We all know that a two-parent household is way better of a scenario to raise men and women.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I do not feel that women raising men creates that. Creates that,
because I feel like if I instill, there's a certain
Well,
there's a certain level.
Men not being in the household creates that.
No, that's saying though that puts
men
opinion out there that there has to be a man, which would say that it wouldn't work with two men or two women.
I feel is single mothers have to put in more time with. They have to put time into other things. So they have to put time into work. But if they were a single mother and they were able to stay home with their child, then they can do more. Like they can instill more in the child. If I'm a single mother and I know that, okay, it would be beneficial for my child to be around a male, then I get a fucking mentor. I get a male mentor or something like that.
I understand what you're saying, but it's something different with a man being there day in and day out to really, and I think you guys discount this, but you discount it not really knowing how a man should be raised. So I think I hear you, but I think like don't discount everything that's put against the black man, that a black woman has the necessary components to make sure that understand how a man should be raised, how a man, right? Like there's unique cases, and we can all probably call on unique cases of black men that were raised by black women that are fantastic. But then we also know cases of men that purport to be men, and you go back into the history and they like to talk about drama, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, a lot of that comes from all the aunties and shit that had raised him. He was around drama at that time.
But you also know of black men who were raised by fathers that become criminals, that become domestically violent towards women. Like you have men who are in the home with their wives who give these men complexes, these masculine you have to be this way, you have to be that way. They don't know how to treat women, they don't know how to talk to women, and that's coming from straight men.
Because it's like if a man, Like if a father has been hurt by a woman, then he can raise his man to be biased towards women. You know what I'm saying? If he's been hurt by a woman. And at that point, that's unfair. You know what I'm saying? There are certain things that men can instill in men that are unacceptable, and there are certain things that women can instill in their children that are unacceptable. But I just feel like it depends on the person. If you're educated as a woman, if I am forced to raise a child or raise a man by myself, then I will make sure that he is provided with an example. So I
think the example is huge, because I cannot, like, let's say I was a single parent and I had a daughter. I cannot, like, I don't know how to be feminine. I have no idea.
Yeah, so
I have no idea. I see examples that I look at women that I may be attracted to, but like I don't know what are the components in order to make that what that is into that person.
Yeah, but
so like I would have to rely on female supervision to help me communicate, to help me. And then in fact, if I was raising as a single father, raising a young, I'd have to rely on them on different ways. I would have to communicate with this young person who's of a different gender than me.
Yeah, but it may not be 24/7 either. So that doesn't mean that we're incapable of doing it. Like you can rely on a woman, but it could be temporary. Like you may not have a woman example around 24/7, but you know, like, okay, if my daughter gets a period, I know who to call because I know what woman I would prefer my daughter to grow up to be.
And then it depends on the child too.
And that don't mean that you a shitty single parent.
Just because you a single father doesn't mean your daughter is not gonna grow up to be feminine.
Yeah.
Like she's still gonna, like, if she's a feminine girl, she's still gonna be feminine.
Yeah.
Like people are themselves.
I would argue that a single, it's nature versus nurture. I'd still argue that a man, a really masculine, that likes sports, that like to do this, like to do that, and he's raising a young girl, that young girl will probably have way more tomboy tendencies.
So I have seen
because of how she's raised.
Way more girls, daddy girls, real sweet, real feminine girls, because their daddy's been the one that. And then you have these girls who's been raised by just their mother, but they have a whole bunch of brothers, and them the ones that are the tomboys. So it's not about you having a mother or a father in the home. It's about that person's personality and what they gravitate to.
It's both,
and it's about what you experience in your life, in your environment. Like right now. You're a lesbian. Did that have anything to do with your mother or your father? Did that have anything to do with you being with a woman majority of the time?
That's nature, but there's components of nurture that form China to be China. There's components of nurture that
is true. There are things that have formed
me to be me.
That has formed me to be me, but none of those things formed my feminine side or my masculine side.
Oh, you don't know that.
No, I can tell. I am very aware.
There was probably someone in first grade that says something to you that is a component of your personality today without you even realizing or knowing.
That had nothing to do with who raised them.
That's nurture.
That's not who raised them.
But that's nurture.
That's not who raised them, though.
You are a product of your environment.
I am a product of my environment.
If you grew up in New York, you'd be completely different. If you grew up in any other, you are a product of your combined. So I'm saying it's both. It's nature and nurture. Without you understanding, like, look at you with your Philly ass accent. Your shit is.
I'm not Philly. I have no family. I have like one cousin in Philly.
Philly.
I don't know why you saying that.
That still has nothing to do with it, because at the end of the day, I am very aware of who I am. I know I am very aware of the makeup of me, the things that turn me. I can tell you the negative things. I can tell you all of the little junk I got from where my
environment. So you're not a product of your environment?
I am a product of my environment, but I am not. My masculinity and my femininity has nothing to do with the people that raised me. Because if that was the case, I would be a very soft-spoken, very vulnerable, very submissive straight girl. That's Christian straight girl.
And I feel like people don't pay attention to their biases as well. Like, you are pro masculine on top of you were raised by a man solely. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the reason why you speak in that way, the reason why you feel the way is influenced by you being majority raised by a man.
And it also has a lot to do with the bullshit that I see around me. Like for you to say that it's not a, like it's both, what I'm saying is both nature and nurture.
I agree with that.
Like, so if you agree with that, then you also agree that you've been formed by your experiences in life.
But
Your sexuality may not have, but there's components of your personality that have been formed by your experiences. How could you disagree with that?
I'm not saying I disagree with that. What I'm saying
So what do you disagree
is that
with?
what that molded had nothing to, like me being feminine or like you're saying my feminine or masculine, it comes from you having a male or you having a female. And I'm saying that I know men or women now, transgender, that were raised by just men or raised by just women, and they still have their certain amount of masculinity or their certain amount of femininity, and it has nothing to do with who raised them. It has something to do with what they molded as, what they were more into.
I get what you're saying, and I hear you 100%. And what I'm saying to you, and I've been saying this time and time again, and you keep on agreeing with this, but you say different things, is that it's both. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who raised you. You probably would have came out lesbian no matter what. You probably would have.
But there's different types of lesbian.
Hold on. You would have came out how the way that you feel today. But like, it's always a sliding scale. Like there is not a scientific equation for nature versus nurture. There's some people who are born